Hello my Bandicoot and welcome back to the channel. Today's episode we're covering the last two chapters of the Jump Spin Adventure. The previous episode covered the finale, but there were two additional chapters that were released in the Koro manga that didn't get a volume release. So this is kind of an interlude that leads up to Crash Bandicoot Warped. So these last two chapters are part of the second manga series, but they never got officially translated as far as I'm aware. So I used the Google Lens translation. This is actually my second attempt of reading this because the translations are god-awful. So I was kind of like tripping over the translation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it as best as I can, but I'm not going to read it like directly as it says the words on the page because it's very broken and I don't want you guys to like just click off of this video because I'm not making any sense. So I'm going to just do my best to read this mess and finish up the series with you guys. So, Jump Dance Adventure Chapter 15 starts now. Let's set off on an adventure around the world, the ambition of an idiot. So Crash, Coco, Cortex, and Aku Aku. A long time ago, in Tasmania, there was a bad guy. He caused a lot of trouble on Earth. The spirit of the island was not happy, so he locked up and sealed away the evil. And it shows a flashback of Aku Aku imprisoning Uka Uka, and instead of being in the temple, there's just like this little cylindrical bucket with a band-aid on it that he covers them. So it says, the Earth is saved and everything is peaceful. And that was a long time ago. And then it shows that the prison is actually behind Crash's house on a hill. I ate everything! I ate everything! That was so good, I loved all that food. Well, my brother's happy, so that's all that matters. But we're out of food now, so you better clean up. What? Okay, yeah, I'll clean. But look! I could do more than clean. I could spin the dishes. This is fun. Oh no! And then he drops it and they all break and she gets her broom and she's going to beat him up if he doesn't clean up the mess. And she says, go ahead, clean up and then I'll bring you some more food. Crash says, sorry, I was excited. And then she looks over and she goes, so what about this guy? Why is he even here? And Cortex is like, hey, I want a refill. Give me some more. And she says, get out of here. I'm sick of you. Then it shows Crash, he's beat up, cleaning up the mess. Cortex is dealing with Coco. And then Aku Aku says that he senses something. Crash asks him what he senses, and he says, I don't know, it's a bad feeling. And then Cortex says, oh, is it love? And then Aku Aku says, no, get off of me! And he smacks him, calls him disgusting, and sends Cortex flying. Cortex flies up over the hill and bangs into the prison. Then Coco says, what's the feeling? Like, what's going on? What's wrong? And Aku Aku says, well, the feeling that I'm sensing is a long time ago, I trapped my brother, Uka Uka. I could feel his presence. And then she says, oh, well, where did you lock him up? And Crash is tripping and falling and making a mess. And she says, so where is it? And Aku Aku's just like, oh, on the top of the hill over there. And then they look and they see that Aku Aku actually threw Cortex into the prison and now the seal is broken, the band-aid there. So it's cracked and he's going to get, and Uka Uka's going to get free. So they're like, oh no, what did he do? The seal! And then Uka Uka starts getting free. Ha 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 ha! And he says, oh no, it's Uka Uka. I remember. And Uka Uka says, he's finally back! The world is going to be in my hands! So then Aku Aku and Uka Uka start talking back to one another, and Uka Uka says something along the lines of, you've been having peace this whole time I was gone, but now I'm back and I'm going to rule the world. And then Crash comes over and spins him. And the stopwatch that he was holding goes flying. And then Crash grabs the prison and he slams it on top of him like a bucket. But obviously that's not going to work because the seal's been broken. So Crash is like, well, I trapped them, so what's going on? And then Uka Uka the seal's broken, so he's not actually trapped, and he bursts off, and he says, "Well, you stop it! Who are you anyway? What's going on?" And then Crash says, "Crash Bandicoot." So then you've got Uka Uka flying in the air, and Crash says, "Wait a minute." Uka Uka is flying up in the air, and Crash says, "Wait a minute." And then they show the crystals. So, I know I said so multiple times. I had to pause it and try and reread this because it wasn't making any sense to me. So Uka Uka flies up in the air, and he says that he needs to go get the power crystals. And Aku Aku says that if they get the crystals, they'll be able to save the day. And he says, if we get the crystals, Crash cuts him off and says that all the girls on Earth will love me, and it shows Uka Uka with the crystals and the Bandicoots falling in love with him. So Crash wants to get the crystals before Uka Uka so the girls won't fall in love with him. So Uka Uka says that he's going to go get all the crystals so he could take over the world, and he teleports away. Then Aku Aku tells Crash that they have to go on another adventure to get the crystals before Uka Uka can get them. Then it shows that Uka Uka teleported over to where Cortex was, and he tells him to wake up. Cortex is having a dream. Uka Uka says, "Don't be lazy!" And he shows that he still has the pocket watch, which I guess in the manga right now, instead of having entropy, they're just going to have them use that pocket watch to travel through time. Then Cortex wakes up and he says, "Oh no, it's Uka Uka. Why'd you come here?" So, despite them not having Uka Uka and Cortex in an adventure in the past together, it's always established that Cortex is Uka Uka's minion. So, Cortex is saying, like, "How did you get out of prison?" And then Uka Uka's like, "You're my minion. We're going to go do this. Come on. We got to go get the crystals." And then he screams at Cortex and says, "Enough, the eagle moves." So, pretty much he's saying, come on, go over to Crash and trick him like you did in the past and have him help you get the crystals. So then we go back over to Crash and Coco, and Aku Aku is explaining to them that they have to get the crystals before Uka Uka, otherwise Uka Uka will take over the world. And then Crash says, "Ugh," because he can't pay attention, he's getting bored. And Coco grabs his eyelids and says, "Wake up, come on, we have to go." And then, of course, Cortex pops back up, and he says, "Hey guys, how you doing? I defeated that Uka Uka guy. Let's go get the crystals just to make sure, so we can save the day." So he's trying to trick Crash again, and Aku Aku, Coco, and Crash are like, "Yeah, we don't believe you," and they turn their back to him, and he said, "No, please believe me." And Aku Aku said, "You have a very untrustworthy face." Then Cortex says, "No, this is actually what happened." And they go into a flashback of Uka Uka telling Cortex to listen to him. And Crash says that he doesn't believe him. And then Cortex says, "No, really, look, I beat him up like this." And he shows a fake picture of Uka Uka on the ground, and he's stomping on it. And he's like, "Yeah, I beat him up, so let's go get the crystals and save the day." And then it shows Uka Uka, like, seeing Cortex's lie about him. And he's like, "Oh, that one." So then Crash says, "You still don't look trustworthy." And then Cortex says, "I don't look trustworthy. Look at him. He doesn't look trustworthy." And then Crash is like, "Well, you're right. That's true. He is kind of suspicious. Let me move his face around." And then Aku Aku uses his beard like he does in other chapters and makes a fist and punches Crash in the head and is like, "Hey, we have to get the crystals. Come on, stop joking around." So then Cortex and Crash are like, "Okay, let's go get the crystals together." And Crash says, "Okay, well, let me go pack up my stuff before we go on this adventure." And he shows off his Aku Aku pajamas and boxers. And Cortex is like, "Oh, we got to take all that stuff on the adventure." And he says, "Yeah, come on, if you really want my help." And then they grab all the bag of stuff, and they start their next adventure. And they say, "Come on, let's go on the adventure." And that's the end of chapter 1, or 15 rather, of the prelude, and you see Uka Uka there making a scary face. And let's jump to the next chapter. The final chapter of the series is chapter 16. So you got Uka Uka there saying like, oh, haha, they fell for it. And then we jump into chapter 16. 2 million dance, jump, great adventure. And it shows like this crazy guy with big eyebrows and goggles. And it shows Crash dressed up like a frog. He's got flippers on, and there's a little frog character there. So Crash is going to go help this frog guy to get a crystal. So they show Crash, and he's looking into a hose, and they don't really explain how they teleport through time. They just kind of do. So Crash is looking for the crystal in the hose up on the top of his hill. And Coco's like, come on, that's not where they are. We gotta go. And Cortex is like, do you even remember what they look like? And then they say, come on, it's a big place. We gotta go. We gotta find it. Then they teleport through time. Again, it's not really established how they do it, but when they do it, it makes Cortex's stomach upset. Aku Aku's like, okay, whatever. So then they're walking, and this little frog is like, hey, can you help me? Crash, they're still looking for the crystal. And he goes, hey, can you help me? And Crash is like, oh, look, it's a cool little frog. What do you need help with? And the frog says, hey, there was this guy, and he casted a spell on me. I'm not really a frog. I need your help to beat him, because if we beat him, he'll turn me back into my true form. So Crash is like, oh, really? That's crazy. Yeah, of course we'll help you. Coco's like, oh, really? That's pretty sad. And, you know, Cortex doesn't care. Cortex, like, first off, see him up there, he's stretching his eyeballs, he's hurting them. So Cortex doesn't care. Crash is kind of like, whoa, really? That's wild. And Coco's like, oh yeah, we can help. Look at Crash is so sad. The story really moved him. Cortex doesn't care, though. He's yelling, we don't have time for that. We gotta go get the crystals. And then the frog said, oh, well, the guy that transformed me actually has a crystal. Which immediately sets Cortex's, like, senses wild. He hears him. He's like, oh, he has a crystal? Well, let's go help him. He's like, I'll help you now. So his attitude completely changed. So the frog brings them to a castle. And they get there, and Crash is like, oh, wow, is this where the guy is? And then the guy says, ha 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 ha, you've stepped back into my realm. So you want to fight again, Mr. Frog? And they're all looking around like, where's that voice coming from? And Crash sees, like, there's like a cup on the ground where the voice is coming from, and he pulls the cup. And the dude was actually just hiding underground, talking through a cup through a string. And he's like, oh, I can't believe you did that to me. And then they see him, and he's some creepy-looking guy with goggles. They could be glasses. I think they might be goggles. And crazy eyebrows. And they see that he has the crystal. I guess his name is Berserker, possibly. And he says, hey, Berserker, I want you to turn me back into my human form. And he says, only if you could defeat me. And he says, yeah, this is the guy. And then Cortex sees the crystal, and he's like, ooh, the crystal. And he tries to go, like, flirt with the guy. And the guy kicks him into a tree. And he says, okay, so if you can beat me in the contest, I will change you back. And then Crash says, good luck, Frog. And the frog was like, actually, today, you're not going to fight me in the contest. You're going to fight this guy. And he pushes Crash up. So the guy's like, oh, okay, fine. I'll fight you. And he gets ready to swing. And Crash is like, oh, I need a weapon. Someone give me something quick. And they're like, we didn't bring a weapon, Crash. So then the frog says that if you beat him, you'll end up becoming a frog. So don't give up, Crash. You have to defeat him. And then Crash says, okay, I'll take care of it. So then the Berserker guy lifts his sword up, and it's so heavy that it slams down into the ground, and it just barely misses Crash, and Crash's eyes are bugging out of his head. And as he tries to pull it out, he breaks the sword and hits himself in the head. And then he says, oh, wow, you really defeat me. That was really strong of you. And Crash is like, yo, I didn't do anything. You hit yourself in the head with that sword. And then he grabs the sword out of his hand. It was like it was already cracked, and it fell apart. So now he doesn't have a weapon, and he's like, okay, I'm going to defeat you a different way. And then it shows him just started eating Wumpa fruit. So then the guy was like, hey, take this seriously, and he smacks him in the head with a fan. And then it shows Coco and the frog on the sidelines. And she's like, can you just go and fight your own battles? And the frog lands back in the battlefield. And he says, okay, fine. We're going to change the rules. Instead of a fight, how about we do a swimming contest? And he jumps into the water and starts swimming. And then he says, are you kidding me? That's not going to work. I can't even swim. And then Cortex comes flying out. I don't know why he's a ballerina, but he spins and he knocks the guy into the water. So the frog sees the guy drowning. And the guy says, I can't swim, help me. The crystal's too heavy. And then they say, the crystal's too heavy, it's going to sink. So the frog's like, I can't save you. And then Coco says, big brother, go help him. Then we'll get the crystal. And Crash jumps and slams into a log. And then he falls into the water. So then the frog says, okay, fine, I'm going to go. And he jumps in, and he goes to the Berserker, and he bites his head, which transforms him back into his original form. There's a big poof. And apparently, the Berserker was a frog, and the frog was this weird king guy. So, Berserker's in the water there. Frog jumps on him and bites his head, but I guess that counts as a kiss. And then the Berserker, you can see there's his glasses or his goggles, so he poofs and he turns back into his form, which was originally a frog, and then the frog turns back into his form, which was originally the king guy. So then he says, hey, you turned me back into a frog. And he goes, well, at least you can swim now. And then the Berserker frog is like, oh yeah, that's true. And then they swim away together to go save Crash. And Crash is, he was drowning, so they get him out. And they press his stomach, and he spits out the water. And then he says something along the lines of they were rivals and really good friends. And he said, okay, well, now it's time to go because I'm back to normal, so we're going to pack up our house. And he knocks over the castle, and it was actually just like cardboard, and they have a little tiny house behind it. So it was a big fake castle this entire time. And Crash is like, what? What's going on? And you got Berserker Frog and the King there. And he was like, well, we're really buddies, and we're rivals, but everything's good now. So he tells the Berserker Frog, hey, since they defeated you, can you give them the crystal? And he's just like, yeah, I guess. And now they're all shocked. They're like, really? We get the crystal? And then they show the frog jumping over, and he hands the crystal to Crash. And Crash is like, hey, thank you. And I guess it says, hey, then tears are like a waterfall. So I guess he's like really happy and sad. He's sad that they're leaving, but happy that he got the crystal. And then this is the last page, and it says, time for them to go. And they grab their castle, and they run away. And then Crash does a little dance because he's happy that they got their first crystal. And it shows that Uka Uka is still watching them from behind the scenes. And that is the final chapter. On the side there it says, dance even when you're in pain or sad. That's the great thing about Crash. And that, my friends, is the end of the Crash Bandicoot manga for the Jump Spin Adventure or Jump Dance Adventure. I hope you enjoyed this journey with me. And hopefully in the next episode, we will have proper translations for the Crash Bandicoot 3 manga adaptation. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and we will see you in the next video. Take care and have a great night.